Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies, where we explore all things cinema. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Dreamers, which was released in 2003. This was directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. The screenplay was by Gilbert Adair, and it starred Michael Pitt, Louis Garrel, and Eva Green. I'll just read a short synopsis. In May 1968 Paris, film-loving twins Theo and Isabel befriend American student Matthew during student protests. While their parents travel, they pull him into a month of sensual exploration until reality intrudes. Okay, so this is a film that I've long admired. I saw it many years ago. I've had the DVD for quite a while as well. And this is the first, just revisiting it again, it's the first time I've seen it in quite a while. And I still find it to be quite powerful, this coming-of-age story. It's certainly twisted in some ways and erotic in others. But at the same time, it really explores this sort of coming-of-age story amongst these three people in this transgressive way. But Matthew, who is played... I love Michael Pitt. I think Michael Pitt is, such an incredible, underrated actor. I've long admired his work. He's studying in Paris, and he meets them at the student protest that happened in May 68. He meets Isabel and Theo at one of the protests, and they have an instant kinship. And then, gradually he becomes closer with them. And like I said in the plot summary, the twins, their parents go away for a month, so they have the whole place to themselves, right? So they invite Matthew to stay over. And, gradually what he begins to see is that they have this incestual relationship, the two of them, and he's disturbed by it and really uncomfortable with it. But then he gradually learns to accept it, even though I think he knows deep down that it's wrong. There will be spoilers in this review, FYI. Which in the end, which I'll get to. Of course, he certainly has to make a choice whether or not to stick with these two, or go back to being on his own. But it becomes as though they're all one person. I mean, the twins certainly are, as Matthew describes them, as two halves of the same person, so, and they have this, the twins have this codependent relationship, and what Matthew sees is that, he finds them sleeping naked together, they kiss on the mouth before bed, and then they play these weird games, these sort of, they're movie-related games where someone acts out a scene in the movie, and then the other person has to guess what it is, and if they can't figure it out, they have to basically do a dare, or that the other person forces them to do, and they usually involve something sexual. For example, Theo loses what Isabel is acting. She's acting out a scene from Blonde Venus, and Theo can't figure out what it is, and so he gives up, and then she says, "Now you have to masturbate in front of us," while he's looking at a picture of Marlene Dietrich, and so it's just these really twisted, disturbing moments between them and this dynamic. And they have they're big. All the three of them are huge movie buffs, and there's movie posters all over their apartment. This was at a time when I was reading Roger Ebert's review, and he was saying this is at a time when cinema was at the forefront of the youth culture. Like, young people lived for movies and loved movies. It was really meant a lot more to them and to society at that time. These people eat, sleep, and breathe cinema, so they're acting out various scenes throughout, which Bertolucci cuts to the various scenes from movies like Bande à Pas and Breathless and Blonde Venus that I mentioned, the Top Hat. There's so many, and there's this, I mean, I dare to call it a love triangle, but it is sort of a love triangle where, they bring Matthew into the fold, and he like I said, he's initially uncomfortable with this, but there is an attraction between him and Isabel. And of course, when Isabel loses the movie game, she is forced to have sex with, well, I say forced, she clearly wanted to. Theo says, you have to have sex with Matthew right in front of me, and so they do. And then, she comes across as like this really sophisticated, experienced woman, but then you find out that they're in their early 20s, all of them, and that after they have sex, there's blood everywhere. So she's a virgin. She's never even been on a date, and really they've lived this secluded life. They seem to be at odds with their parents over different political opinions and beliefs, and so they've been secluded. It's really just been the two of them, this codependent, incestual like relationship that they have, and Matthew is sort of witnessing all this and becomes comfortable with it. I mean, I think a big part of that is the fact that he has this attraction for Isabel, and then once they have sex, they have this really erotic love affair that begins. And so they begin to separate from Theo. And there's a really interesting scene where then Theo brings home another woman, and then his sister is jealous and starts pounding on the door, for Theo, because she hears the two of them, and then she looks at Matthew like he's a complete stranger, and she's like, "Who are you? Who are you?" So, Matthew is trying to come to terms with their relationship. He's trying to find a way to fit in. He's trying to accept it, but really he knows that it's wrong, and he doesn't really know what to do about it because he's clearly falling for Isabel. And there's a scene when they're all in a bath together, and then afterwards they try to shave his pubic hair, and he's like, what is wrong with you? And they say, oh, these are just games. So everything to them, everything in life this is where the title "The Dreamers" come from. They live in their houses. They don't live outside their houses, and they go outside, but they're primarily home or at the movie theater. It seems to be one or the other, and so they're dreamers, right? They're it's a time of high idealism, which is fine with the youth. I mean, I love idealists, but in their case, it's almost from a place of innocence and puberty, really. Like, they seem like little kids, even the way they interact with their parents. They've just been in this cocoon together, and so he's trying to get them out into the world more. And then he says, let's go on a date together. He says finally to Isabel, let's go on a actual date, and she's never been on a date with a guy before. So this is all, it's really fascinating, just the way in which it's the blend of sort of transgressive cinema mixed with erotic drama, with this coming of age story, with the backdrop of these the May 68 protests, the protests that continue to happen around France. And the performances are wonderful. Eva Green, Michael Pitt, Louis Garrel. It's a really, really good movie, and like I said, she at one point, Matthew asks Isabel, what would you do if your mother found out that your relationship with your brother is really like? And she says she would kill herself, like that. And then they come home early and find them all naked in this tent, and so now they know that something's not right with their kids. And she attempts to kill herself and all of them, actually, but with gas. And then that's when the right at the end, a bottle gets thrown through the window, and there's all these protests happening on the street, which start to get violent. This protest actually really saved them, or else they would have all been dead. And so they go outside, and Theo is going to start to turn to violence at this protest, and Matthew says, no, we can't do this. We have to use reason and love. And he kisses them both, and Isabel has a choice. She can either go with Matthew or go with Theo, and she's so tied to Theo that she goes with him. And then Matthew does not want to get violent, right? So he breaks off and he goes his own way, So I think it was sort of it was a real awakening that this has all become too much, and he's got to find a way out of this. And I also think, particularly from Matthew's point of view, it's much more of a coming of age for him, as opposed to the twins, because he is falling in love. He is having this sexual relationship with this woman. I mean, they're coming of age as well, but they're still really kind of stuck in adolescence in a lot of ways, whereas him, he's kind of coming into his own. He's making his own decisions. He's learning about politics. He's forming his own views. He's a real, and he's not afraid to stand his ground and speak up for himself. So, in that way, I see it as a coming of age story as well. So again, it's a complex look at this coming of age relationship between these three people in this transgressive erotic form and style of cinema. So it's a wonderful film. I really have always really enjoyed it. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this review. If this is your first time here, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. It is absolutely free to subscribe. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you are interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, I'd really appreciate the support. Please go to patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the Movies for full details. Thank you again, everyone, for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.